I'm very honored to be here. You may be wondering why I'm here. Drove down from the Pentagon this morning, and I'm here because this is vitally important, and it's very important personally to me, as well as to our corps and our regiment. And I recognize that it is more than just Army legal professionals who are in here, but I know as military professionals, the entire audience will appreciate the honor that we're going to bestow on our fallen comrade, and much more than just a fallen comrade, but a leader, a great leader in our corps. So I want to say a few things about Chief Swartworth before I reintroduce Major General Altenberg. You know, I only knew Chief Swartworth for 2 days, and those 2 days were November 6th and November 7th of 2003. And just as General Altenberg was talking about people that he knew who influenced his life, his career, you know, we are all part of something much larger than ourselves. And Chief Swartworth is part of that, and we are, by repeating what we know about people, by relating and making them complete, three-dimensional, living memories, there's so much more than just a name on a plaque or something that we walk by, a picture that we walk by, just as he did a few moments ago with people who he met in the early 70s who went back to Burma. You know, this military, this corps of ours, this Army, this military of ours, this Judge Advocate General Corps is an unending chain of extraordinary leaders and extraordinary people that do things on an ordinary day that touch us. And I think that it's why I am, after almost 30 years, so proud to continue to serve and just suit up and wear the same team jersey that the rest of you wear. And whether it's U.S. Marine Corps, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Army, it starts with U.S. and that's the team that I want to be on. So going to Chief Swartworth, which is the reason why we're here. You know, I met her myself, and I was a major at the time. And I'm cognizant of the fact that I'm quite old now. This was 15 years ago. 15 years ago, and many of you were not in the service. But we were in Mosul. So we were in Mosul, Iraq in November of 2003, and General Romig traveled over to Iraq to fulfill his statutory duties as the Judge Advocate General to conduct an inspection under Article 6 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And Chief Swartworth was part of that entourage, and there was just an energy. It was an outstanding Office of the Judge Advocate General. We were very excited to have outside leadership come up and visit us. My colleagues had done incredible work, and I remember Chief Swartworth. If you didn't know her, she was petite. She was a bundle of energy. She was so thrilled to be out there in the field and to be encountering soldiers, whether they were judge advocates or just soldiers in the 101st. And we had a great day and a great visit together, and she asked pointed questions, and she was just so energized, you know, thinking about what our current judge advocate tells us to be ready, that these folks, whether they were reservists, enlisted officers, they were ready, they were tackling every challenge that was thrown in front of them, and they were doing great stuff. And she just brought this energy to the palace where we were up there in Mosul. I remember joking with her. There was still back then you had murals with Saddam Hussein, and I remember joking with her because there was a mural of Saddam Hussein holding the hand of this little girl, and she was very petite. And we were comparing her to this little girl in the picture, and you could tell that the artist had a real sense of humor because she looked terrified. And I was wondering, like, Saddam, because she's like, oh, I don't know about you, you know, like dictator man. And that was a backdrop for Chief's encounter with us at the 101st, and I remember it just so vividly. And then we went up on the roof of the palace, and we smoked cigars, and you know, we just thought we were so cool. We enjoyed it was a cool night up there in northern Iraq, and you could just tell we got energy from her and her from us, and part of that entourage, and we just enjoyed ourselves. And it wasn't like it was just the officers. I know that there's a sergeant first class. It was an E3 that was part of that group, and he had never smoked a cigar before, and no one had filled him in on the fact that you're not supposed to inhale cigar morning, he was quite peaked. He was a little green around the edges, and we had breakfast together. Sergeant Major Gilmore, and we just enjoyed it. And they were making the rounds and just making sure they shook hands with all the folks there in the dining room. It wasn't a dining room. In the chow hall. And but it was that personal encounter that they made sure that they had with as many soldiers as possible. And it obviously great tragedy struck within an hour or two of us shaking hands and loading on the aircraft going down there to Crit. And she gave the full measure of devotion along with Sergeant Major Gilmore. But they were very alive and very real and very three-dimensional. And I dare say I would have remembered that even if that tragedy hadn't struck, and don't we all wish that it hadn't. And I know for a fact that she would be here, even as a retiree, if we were doing the same for somebody else that she had known. She would be right here, leading as she did throughout her life and inspiring people. And so when the opportunity arose to come down here and to serve a small part of this ceremony, I said, yes, absolutely. I would be honored to do so. And so I'm about to reintroduce Major General Altenberg, and part of that unending chain of people and people who influence you. I first remember meeting General Altenberg when I was a captain in the 82nd Airborne Division. And he was down there for an Article 6 visit. And I remember, there's no way you remember this, sir, but I was a captain. I was a trial counsel with the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment. I was on whatever's higher than Cloud 9. I was on Cloud 11 and a half. I said, sorry, I mentioned. So there I was, and I had a speech. Sometimes people tell you got an elevator speech, right? You got an elevator speech. And I wanted to stay an extra year. I was a FLEP, and I wanted to practice law. We had great court reporters at that time. Chief Johnson was one of our court reporters. And so I had this speech for General Altenberg, and I didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was a brilliant advocate, but I think I was probably pushing on an open door to ask to stay for another year in the 82nd to learn a little bit more about the practice of law. But I've never forgotten that because it allowed me to try some of the hardest cases that I did as a trial counsel. So I hope that you learned a little bit. If you didn't take the chance to read General Altenberg's biography, let me just offer some highlights. He mentioned that he was an enlisted soldier in the Vietnam War, and from there, I would submit to you, sir, that you didn't actually choose between teacher and lawyer. I think that he teaches plenty. He teaches every day, right? And he's also an advocate. But he didn't actually abandon that teaching profession, I don't think, because he has taught so much about leadership for so many years. And if you look at what he's done throughout his JAG Corps career, serving in all of the hardest jobs and thinking strategically about our Corps and being part of the leadership that made us able on the 12th of September to be able to say, you know what, we're going to address this threat to our nation. And we were ready to do it because of the leadership that had come before us. It had been a long time, a Desert Storm we had, but there was a constant knowledge by our leadership, our senior leadership, to know that we could be called at any moment to do what our country's going to ask us to do. And if you look at his biography, you'll see also that not only was he a superior judge advocate, but he absolutely continues to serve today. And I think in a way that I know Chief Swartworth would be very proud if she were here. And he's still active in the AVA LAMP committee and doing things that actually matter to soldiers, the Military Justice Committee, coming down here and investing his time to be with you, to have that generational impact. And so I would just ask all of you to think about what you can do in your own leadership, your own life, your own career model to make sure that you're building some more just like you to come and make sure that we do have this unending chain of great professionals, great legal professionals that have come before us and that will come after us. And so it's my great honor with that to reintroduce to you Major General Sheldon Altenberg, who's going to speak about Chief Swartworth. Thank you.